you must have had a huge inheritance. You must have had outside help in some way. There's just no way your business has bought that house. One of the happiest times of our lives, I think. We felt like we were the only people in the world doing this. We weren't, but we felt like it. We didn't know anybody else that was selling on eBay. We didn't know anybody else that was reselling. Not that I knew that was a term. Hello and welcome back to my shed. I'm actually sat on my table in the middle of the shed. Slightly different view. There we go, there's all the stuff. I thought I would come on and make a video because about a month ago, I guess, I put a post on Instagram. I'll find the picture and pop it on screen now. I was out in the garden and I looked back at the house and I had one of those moments where I was reflecting on how far we'd come with our business. And I put that post up and I explained that it amazes me that we are privileged to live in this amazing house in Norfolk. We are mortgage free, completely debt free. And, you know, it amazes me looking back how far we've come through reselling. Stuff like this has brought us to here. That was the essence of the post. And somebody commented on that. And they basically said, no way have you bought that house from reselling. You must have had a huge inheritance. You must have had outside help in some way. There's just no way your business has bought that house. And I read this and I responded and I said, well, you may find it hard to believe, but that doesn't change the fact that it is true. So I replied to the comment and didn't think anything of it. But then the original poster deleted the comment, which is a shame. I was going to screen grab it and share the comment for some context. Anyway, I wasn't offended by this. In fact, I think we should all take things we read on the internet, particularly, with a pinch of salt. We should all question things, not take things as a given. So I wasn't offended really, and I can understand that maybe it does seem like a bit of a stretch that we bought this place on the back of this business, particularly if you don't have the context of the backstory, how we got to here, because I'm very aware that it might seem incredible when you only see what I do now, how much I'm turning over now, how much I'm making now. I don't pretend I earn a fortune doing this. We do okay, and we are very comfortable because of the financial position we are in. But I thought it kind of got the cogs whirring, and I thought it would be an interesting video to share how we got to this point, where you see me now pottering around in my shed, selling bits and bobs and doing as much as I need and as much as I want to be comfortable, because that's where I'm at now. But it took a long time to get here and to be mortgage free and living in this lovely house. So I thought I'd kind of go back to the beginning and explain what we did to get here. I did make a similar video, but it was like 6 years ago or something. And I'm very aware we've got a lot of people who have only just found the channel, and this is all you see, me in a shed pottering around selling bits and bobs. So if we go back to the beginning, I mean, where is the beginning? I guess it's when I was working for Virgin Records. Previous to that, I was working for R Price Records, which is where I met Andrea back in 96, I guess it would have been. And I decided I wanted to set up my own record store. So I left my job with Virgin. I started a small record store and I loved it. It wasn't a success and it didn't really make me any money, but I learnt a lot of things about myself and a lot of things about business. I made a lot of mistakes, but it didn't work out. I ran out of money and I actually went back to working for Virgin eventually. I knew a lot of people within that and I soon got a job back with Virgin. And scroll on a bunch of years and I thought, I need a career, I need a decent job, I need to go out and get something proper. I need to, you know, sort myself out and get a decent job. And I joined the police force. And to say I didn't fit in is an understatement. I realised very quickly, once I was in the job, once I'd gone through all of the police training and was out on the job, I wasn't happy. I didn't fit in. I soon left uniform and went into civilian, and I worked in the fingerprint bureau. And I was just as unhappy there. Meanwhile, in the background, I had discovered eBay. I was a collector of Nintendo, and I was buying up for myself Nintendo Game & Watches. And somebody told me about eBay, and I had a look on eBay, and I was shocked at how much they were going for on there. At this point, I had learnt to drive, and I was going to boot sales, and I was finding them regularly. And I quickly worked out I could make money doing this, buying up stuff cheap and putting it on this eBay place. So I was doing that in the background whilst I was working in the fingerprint bureau, and we rapidly built up a successful part-time business over a year or so. Andrea was working for Amazon at this point. She was a book buyer, so she would source stock for Amazon. But we were both unhappy in our jobs, and we had built up eBay to a point we thought we could do it full-time, maybe. Ellen, our daughter, was on the way. Andrea was on maternity leave, and she decided she wasn't going back. And I walked out on my job in the fingerprint bureau, and we jumped into eBay. So we were renting a house at this point. We had very little money behind us. We had a brand new baby. We were in a tiny rented house, 2 up, 2 down. And it was one of the happiest times of our lives, I think. We felt like we were the only people in the world doing this. We weren't, but we felt like it. We didn't know anybody else that was selling on eBay. We didn't know anybody else that was reselling. Not that I knew that was a term back then. Anyway, let's speed this up. So we did that from home for a while. The house we were in, this small house, small rented house, filled up with stock. Because our background, both of us, for the previous few years was retail, apart from my dalliance with the police, we thought, well, let's set up a shop. So we can have all of the stock there, we can run the eBay business from out the back of the shop, and we can offer to buy stuff through the shop. So it may be a source of stock as well. It was basically a way to get the business out of the house, because the house was filling up. So we set up a high street shop. If you think CEX, it was just like a CEX store before they were a really big chain as they are now. So we started that in 2003, and it took off like a rocket. The shop itself was a huge success. We carried on online, but we switched to Amazon because it was quick and easy, and it was mostly media we were buying. We would buy CDs, DVDs, and games, but it was really the gaming that made us the money. And we built up our Amazon store, kind of put eBay to one side, and the shop took off. We had that shop for best part of a decade, and we expanded it. We moved into a bigger unit. So we had a double-sized high street unit with a huge basement below, which is where I stored all of the online stock. We built that into a huge business, and well, let's scroll back to the beginning of that. We still couldn't afford to buy a house when we opened the shop. Within a couple of years, we ploughed all the profits back in, built the business up to a point where we started to take the profits out, and we started to make some serious money. I made the decision we needed to get on the property ladder, so we bought a flat. A year later, we sold that. We bought a 3-bedroom house in Hitchin. The business had expanded to a point where it was paying us some pretty decent money. And I made the decision that I wanted to pay the mortgage off. I did my calculations and worked out if we could pay the mortgage off as soon as possible, we would save ourselves an absolute fortune in interest. And yeah, I worked out that it was what I thought was the best thing to do. So we set ourselves a mission and we went about paying off the mortgage early. And we achieved that within 6 years on the profits from the shop. So it was reselling on the high street. We did end up doing new stock in the shop as well. We ended up with accounts with Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft through Centresoft and Gem distribution. We got into trading cards. I used to run trading card tournaments. I used to hire venues and set up tournaments. We did huge numbers in Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Duel Masters at the time, all of that stuff, Magic the Gathering. The shop became a huge thing. Anyway, so by the time we got out of the high street, we had paid off the mortgage. That was the mission. But we were both so burnt out by it. We'd had several break-ins. We'd had the shop trashed one time when they broke in. They stole anything of any significant value and trashed the place. That nearly finished me off mentally. And we'd worked ourselves into the ground. So we decided we were going to sell the business. Unfortunately, this coincided exactly with the financial crash, and banks stopped lending to small businesses almost overnight. So despite having offers on the table to buy the business, nobody could get finance. And we decided we were out. So we'd handed in our notice on the lease. Didn't end up getting a buyer. So we closed the shop and I took all the stock with me and sold it off on the internet for the next couple of years. At that point, I kind of went back to this, really, buying and selling online only. We still did a lot of Amazon. I went into Amazon FBA, started doing YouTube around this time. And I started to kind of shrink back what I was doing. Because we were now mortgage free, we were debt free completely. So what we wanted or needed to earn was way less, and we wanted to scale things back. So we did, and we tried various things. We specialized in clothing. We were renting a unit with storage and offices for a while. If you look at the very first videos on this channel, it's from a little rented unit we had. And at that point, we were doing clothing in a big way. But I didn't enjoy it, and I couldn't resist picking up stuff that I enjoyed buying, like video games and toys. So eventually I went back to that, and Andrea carried on with the clothing. We briefly went back onto the high street. We set up a kids' clothing shop, and that didn't turn over enough to be what we wanted it to be. We wanted to be able to staff that and not be tied to it 9 to 5, but it never really got going enough and turned over enough revenue. So within a couple of years, we dropped that and went back to this online, buying and selling whatever we could get our hands on. And that's pretty much where we've been ever since. So that's the context. That's how we paid off our mortgage. So going back to the house situation, we bought a 3-bedroom house in Hitchin in 2006, I think. And prices in Hitchin went crazy. When we sold it about a year ago, it had it'd gone up in value double and a half. So that enabled us to buy this place outright in Norfolk. So we didn't borrow any money to buy this one. Hence we are now living here mortgage free. There were some financial decisions along the way that we made that made all of this happen in the way it had. When we were earning some serious money out of retail, we could have been holidaying, around the world. We could have had brand new cars. We could have been living an amazing lifestyle. We chose to carry on being fairly frugal and living a comfortable, but, you know, a regular kind of life. We're not lavish people anyway, but we decided we would put all of the money into the house, all of the excess money. We didn't go crazy on holidays and cars and whatever you might think you might spend loads of money on. We realized it wouldn't last forever. We could see the high street changing, and physical media changing. I mean, CEX still does really well now, and I dare say if we'd have carried on with retail, it would still be a successful business now, but we could see it changing and it was getting tougher. But we made the decision that that's what we wanted to do, and we stuck to it. So we did sacrifice certain things in order to become mortgage free and get away from all of that, and be financially independent. At the beginning, it felt like a crazy task, but we chipped away at it, and we threw everything we could at it, as in we were overpaying on our mortgage as much as we could without incurring penalties. And then to pay lump sums off the capital, there were not fines, but there were fees involved. So I did all the maths, I calculated it, and the best way to do it, the most kind of economical way of doing it was we would throw all of our money into a high interest savings account once a year, withdraw that and take it off the mortgage. So once a year we would take these huge lump sums off the mortgage, and we just carried on doing that for 6 years. And that's how long it took us to pay off the 3-bed house that we had, the house that you will have seen in my old videos. Yeah, so that's kind of it. It's a condensed version of the story, but there you go. And interestingly, what I mentioned, when we did clothing, we were renting this unit, and we were paying a fair amount of money for that. And we had at home a garage which was put up on the side of the house in the 70s. It was just full of the usual rubbish, lawnmowers and stuff. So we paid to have that converted to interior space, knocked a door through the up and over front door to the garage, because we put a window in there. We raised the floor, insulated it all, etc., etc. That became the room I used to make videos in. That was the old tat cave. So we did that to the house. So we had zero overheads again, pretty much, because we weren't paying any rent on any, storage for the business. And then when we came here, I now have what you see, this double room shed space, which I really love. I've come to really enjoy working in here. It's much nicer in here now. It's summer and it's nice and cool in here. And really, when it's warm. In the winter, it was cold in here. It really was. Anyway, I think I've covered everything. Going back to the original commenter, who basically refused to believe that we paid off our mortgage and own this house here in Norfolk, mortgage free, completely through reselling. But it's how it happened. It's what we did. We worked very hard to achieve it. It didn't happen overnight. It required commitment to an idea of being mortgage free. It required a certain amount of sacrifice, really. We like I said, we could have been living the life of Riley, but I choose to pay it all forward, get ourselves mortgage free. So these days, we can kind of do what we want, work as hard as we need to or we want to. And that's where we are now. So hopefully that gives everything a little bit of context for you. Pop some comments below. Let me know what you thought. I hope I didn't miss out any important things It's sometimes hard when you do these, just pick up the phone and start talking videos, to remember everything you wanted to talk about, but I think I've covered it all. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new here, my name's Nick and I sell stuff on the internet, right? Been doing it for a while. And on this channel, yeah, we just talk about exactly that, where we get this stuff from and how we go about selling it on the internet for profit. If that sounds interesting, please subscribe. I'll find another video and pop it up here. I just talked about when we converted our garage, so I'll find that video. Excuse me, I'll find that video, pop it up here if you want to see how we went about converting our garage. And also in there is some footage of the space I mentioned we used to rent. So check this one out. Thanks for watching. Take care. I'll see you soon.